If you don't buy Bella a car, get out of here. Dad's voice boomed across the dining room, cutting through the silence like a blade. I scanned the table. Emily wouldn't meet my eyes. Bella was still sobbing, and Dad sat there, back stiff, staring at me like I'd betrayed the family. 20 grand for a car. That's what they wanted, all because they heard about my new salary. I'd spent 3 years of my life taking care of Mom after her stroke, covering most of the family's expenses, even giving up my home office so my niece could have a place to study. And now, they're threatening to kick me out over saying no to something ridiculous. That was the moment I knew I had to choose myself. Follow along and I'll tell you the story of what I went through. Hello everyone, I'm Marcus, 35, living solo in a small San Jose, California apartment. I'm a software engineer at a tech company. I'm unmarried and have no kids. And this place I'm in? I rented it 8 months ago after moving out of the family home, where my mom needed daily care. Let me start from the beginning to give you the complete picture of why a guy with a solid job was living with his family and then left. It all kicked off 4 years ago. I was in a studio apartment near my company, and life was good, steady job, nice paycheck, and building my future step by step. Everything was on track until a bombshell hit. One June afternoon, my phone rang while I was coding on a personal project. It was Emily, my sister, her voice shaking. Marcus, Mom had a stroke. I'm at the hospital. My heart stopped. I dropped my laptop, bolted to the car, and sped to the hospital in a total panic. The sight hit me like a truck when I walked into her room. My mom, Stella, the strong, vibrant woman who'd always been our family's rock, was lying motionless in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines beeping steadily. The doctor laid it out. Mom had a severe stroke. The part of her brain controlling movement and speech was severely damaged. She might survive, but she'd never be the same. She'd need constant care, might never speak normally again, and walking would be a struggle. After the doctor left, despair settled over us. Emily was sobbing. My dad, Thomas, stood by Mom's bed, gripping her hand. Her eyes were red, but not a single tear was falling. Me? I stood there like a statue, unable to process it. In the days that followed, our family's world turned upside down. My dad, who'd worked construction for over 30 years, made the toughest call of his life. He quit his job to care for Mom full-time. Seeing my dad, a big, calloused-hand guy who'd spent decades doing hard labor, learn to feed Mom spoonful by spoonful, help her bathe, and patiently guide her through physical therapy broke my heart into pieces. Mom, who used to cook excellent meals for us, was now in a wheelchair, staring out the window with empty eyes. She could understand what we said, but couldn't respond clearly. Sometimes she'd try to speak, but it was just fragmented sounds we had to guess at. Seeing her like that, I knew our family's life was changed forever. No more cozy dinners filled with laughter. No more weekly calls from Mom checking in. Instead, there was heavy silence and the pained look of a woman trapped in her own body. 3 months after Mom came home from the hospital, I kept up my routine of visiting the family every weekend. The drive from San Jose to my parents' place in San Francisco took about an hour, and I'd usually show up Saturday afternoon, stay the night, and head back Sunday. During those early visits, my focus was on Mom. I'd sit by her side, talking even though I knew she couldn't respond, read books, or hold her hands silently. I was trying to hold on to some sense of normalcy in a life that had completely changed for our family. But one Saturday afternoon in September, when I rang the doorbell, Dad answered, and his face caught me off guard. He used to be a strong guy, tanned from years working outdoors, but now he looked like he'd aged a decade in just 3 months. Deep circles under his eyes, scruffy beard, and what hit me hardest was how his shoulders slumped, like he was carrying an invisible weight. For the first time in those 3 months, I saw Dad, not just as the guy taking care of Mom, but as a man breaking under the strain. That day, Emily was there too, with Jaden and her daughter Bella, who was 15. She'd driven from Oakland to visit Mom, and her whole family looked worried when they saw Dad's condition. After Bella and Jaden went to the backyard to play, Emily, Dad, and I sat in the kitchen with coffee. That's when Dad opened up about the past few months. He'd been waking up at 5 a.m. to prep Mom's meds, feed her breakfast, help her bathe, and start her physical therapy. Evenings were more similar. Dinner, meds, staying by her side until she fell asleep. Hearing Dad's story, Emily and I exchanged worried looks. She asked him, "Why didn't you tell us sooner? You can't keep going like this." Dad shook his head, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I can handle it. Your mom needs me." I stayed quiet for a long while after that, Then I looked at him and said slowly, "Do you need financial help? I can pitch in." First, Dad brushed it off, saying he could manage. But Emily and I glanced around the house, spotting the stack of medical bills piling up on the table, and we knew Dad quitting his job to care for Mom had taken a serious toll on their finances. After some back and forth, I made an offer. "I'll send $1,000 monthly to help with Mom's care." Dad's eyes welled up. His voice cracked as he said, "You don't have to do that. You've got your own life." But I'd made up my mind. She's my mom. I want to do this. A few seconds later, Emily spoke up slowly. "I think we need a longer-term solution." The room went quiet again. The three of us sat there, lost in our thoughts. About 5 minutes later, Emily turned to me, her eyes serious. "Marcus, you're single, you can work remotely. What if you consider moving back in with Mom and Dad for a while? You could work from home and help Dad with Mom." Her suggestion caught me off guard. It hadn't even crossed my mind. Giving up my independent life, my apartment in San Jose, to move back to my parents' house. Seeing my hesitation, Emily pressed on. "I know it's a big deal, but Dad can't keep doing this alone. I've got my own family, so it's harder for me to move back." I looked at Dad, who was sipping his coffee, head down, hiding his emotions. Then I glanced toward the living room, where Mom lay quietly in her hospital bed. After a long pause, I said slowly, "Let me think about it for a few days." That next week, I couldn't stop weighing Emily's idea. I thought through everything. My job was remote-friendly, I didn't have a family, so I was more flexible than Emily. And most importantly, Dad needed help. Finally, after chewing it over, I called Emily and said, "I'm in. I'll move back to Mom and Dad's." When I made that choice 4 years ago, I thought I was doing the right thing. But I had no idea it would lead me down a path where I'd have to choose between my family and myself. A month later, I'd finished moving from my studio apartment in San Jose back to my childhood home in San Francisco. I won't lie. Giving up the freedom and personal space I'd built over the years to live with my parents at 31 wasn't an easy call. But when I saw the quiet relief on Dad's face the day I hauled my stuff in, I knew I'd made the right choice. My parents' house had 4 bedrooms. I turned the old guest room into a home office with a wide desk, dual monitors, and noise-canceling speakers, so I could jump on Zoom calls without interruptions. Luckily, my company was excellent about remote work. They understood my family situation and let me work entirely from home, just coming into the office twice a month for big meetings. First, things went smoother than I expected. We split the workload sensibly. Dad was still Mom's primary caregiver, handling her meals, baths, and meds. I'd step in when he needed a break. In the mornings, I'd be up by 7, brewing coffee for Dad and me, then checking on Mom before starting my workday. From 8 a.m. to noon, I locked in on work. Dad knew not to bother me during those hours unless it was urgent. I'd head to the living room at lunch to sit with Mom. I'd read her the news, talk about my projects, or hold her hand silently. Even though she couldn't respond clearly, her eyes lit up whenever I was there. Evenings, after wrapping up work, I'd take over Mom's care so Dad could walk around the neighborhood or read the paper in the backyard. Small moments he needed to stay sane. I learned how to feed Mom spoonfuls of soup, waiting patiently as she swallowed slowly. I got the hang of simple physical therapy exercises, gently supporting her arms and legs to keep her muscles from stiffening. After Mom was asleep at night, Dad and I would sit in the living room, crack open a couple of beers, and watch basketball. Those were rare moments when we could talk like 2 grown men, not just father and son in a tough spot. He'd tell me stories about his years in construction and the projects he worked on. I'd share my tech job, the challenges, and the wins in my career. Weekends, Emily would bring Bella over. Those afternoons, the house came alive with family chatter and laughter. Bella, 15 at the time, adored her grandma. She'd sit by Mom's bed, reading teen romance novels or discussing school. It meant something to see Mom perk up when Bella was around. Even if she couldn't say much, her eyes followed Bella's every move with evident love. Financially, I took on most household costs: electricity, water, internet, groceries, and Mom's medical bills. 2 years passed in that steady rhythm. I maintained high productivity at work and was even promoted to senior software engineer. Mom's condition didn't improve much, but it stayed stable. Dad regained some of his health and spirit. I thought life would continue like that, a challenging but manageable balance. I'd found a way to juggle my career, personal life, and family duties. But then everything shifted when Emily decided to move back. At the time, I didn't know those 2 years of harmony were just the calm before the storm. I didn't realize my sacrifices and efforts would soon be taken for granted. and I never imagined the house I called home would start to feel like a place where I was an outsider. 2 years after I moved back to my parents' house, Emily called me on a Friday afternoon in late March. Her voice sounded more tired and strained than usual. The second I picked up, she got straight to the point. Marcus, Jaden, and I are getting a divorce. It wasn't a total shock. Whenever Emily brought Bella over, I'd noticed she seemed on edge. Jaden rarely came along, and when he did, he was quiet, just fiddling with his phone. Emily explained their marriage had been crumbling for a while. They clashed on everything: parenting, plans. Mom's illness only added more strain to an already fragile relationship. After that call, I felt worried for her and Bella. Divorce is never easy. A week later, Emily called again to say she and Bella were temporarily returning to our parents' house. She told Bella that she needed stability after the divorce and time to get her life together. I didn't object. It was Emily's home too. She had every right to return when things got tough. My only concern was that the house felt crowded. 2 weeks later, Emily and Bella officially moved in. There was no discussion with me about room arrangements or space. When I got home from work, Emily's car was in the garage, and cardboard boxes were stacked in the living room. As I walked in, Emily was unpacking. She flashed a smile. "Hey, I'm back." Bella, now 17 and almost as tall as I, was on the couch, scrolling her phone. She glanced up for a second, said, "Hey, Uncle Marcus," in a flat tone, and returned to her screen. I nodded and asked Emily, "Where are you and Bella sleeping?" After briefly pausing, she said, "I figured Bella could take your office. I'll use my old room." Her words caught me off guard. My office? The space I'd spent 2 years setting up to work quietly? Trying to stay calm, I said, "I need that room for work. I've got online meetings and need a quiet space. Can you and Bella share a room?" Emily looked at me a bit surprised, then said bluntly, "You could move your work stuff to the living room. Bella needs her room, you know? She's dealing with a lot after the divorce." Dad, who was giving Mom water, overheard and chimed in. "Marcus, I think you should let Bella have the room. She needs her own space right now. You're flexible, you can work anywhere." In that moment, I felt cornered. No one asked me about Emily and Bella moving in. No one discussed how we'd share the space. And now I was being asked to give up my office, a space I'd invested time and money into. But looking at Emily's tired eyes, worn from the divorce, and thinking of Bella, a 17-year-old navigating so many changes, I couldn't say no. After thinking it over, I sighed and said, "All right, I'll move my stuff to my room." Emily and Dad nodded, smiling, satisfied with my decision. That night, I spent 2 hours moving all my work equipment to my bedroom. Monitors, printer, files, everything crammed into a tight space. By the time I finished setting up my new work corner, it was almost 11 p.m. I looked around, feeling out of place. But at the time, I thought it was just a temporary adjustment. Emily would find her place soon, and things would return to normal. I had no idea this was just the start of changes that would slowly make this house feel like I was a guest in it. And I never expected that my 17-year-old niece, whom I'd just given my room to, would soon become the source of the family's most significant problems. A week after Emily and Bella moved in, I noticed the quiet life I'd gotten used to was slipping away. Bella, at 17, seemed accustomed to being the center of attention. I first noticed that she never lifted a finger around the house. While Emily was busy unpacking and helping Dad with Mom, Bella was holed up in her room, glued to her phone or binge-watching Netflix. I'd come downstairs to a sink full of dishes from the night before every morning. Dad would always clean them after feeding Mom, while Bella stayed in her room, blasting music. When I asked Emily about splitting chores, she had a ready excuse. Bella was stressed from the divorce. Over the next few days, I watched Bella's attitude more closely. She never greeted anyone when she grabbed food from the kitchen. Even when Dad was carefully helping Mom drink water, Bella would breeze by with a sandwich, not saying a word. One afternoon, I heard Dad's voice from the living room louder than usual. I peeked out and saw him asking Bella to help clean up. She snapped back, asking why she had to clean when she didn't make the mess, then complained about her stress and stormed upstairs. Dad stood there, frozen, after his granddaughter walked off. I stepped out to talk to him about Bella's attitude, but Emily showed up. To my surprise, Dad defended Bella. Instead of calling her out, he told Emily he might have been too harsh. He said Bella was dealing with her parents' divorce and needed adjustment. Emily jumped in, agreeing Bella was in a tough spot and deserved some slack. I stood there, feeling like watching some bizarre script play out. "Dad," The guy who drilled responsibility and respect into me was now making excuses for Bella's rudeness. The pattern kept repeating. Bella would come home late without a heads up, leaving Emily worried, calling her nonstop. When Dad gently asked about it, Emily said Bella needed freedom to cope with her challenging phase, and Dad nodded along. Another time, Dad asked Bella to bring Mom a glass of water. She refused, saying she was busy, without looking up from her phone. When I showed my frustration, Dad brushed it off, saying she was studying and shouldn't be bothered. Every time, Emily and Dad had an excuse for Bella. She's tired. She's doing homework. She needs space. She's stressed from the divorce. That mantra became their shield for every bit of Bella's disrespect. After 2 weeks of watching this, I realized Emily and Dad had coddled Bella to the point that she thought she could do anything without consequences. Emily made protecting Bella from pressure her top priority, and Dad didn't want to make things harder for his granddaughter in this sensitive time. What bugged me most was that I was the only one in the family who saw a problem with Bella's behavior. Emily and Dad act like spoiling her is the right way to show love in tough times. I started feeling tense coming home. It wasn't just losing my quiet workspace. It was watching Bella's disrespect get unquestioningly excused by Emily and Dad. Amid all this, I began to feel my place in the family shifting. I wasn't the son whose opinion mattered anymore. I was becoming an outsider in the house and footing most of the bills. The first week after Bella took over my old office, I tried to adapt to working from my bedroom. I figured out a quiet corner, separate from my sleeping space. But reality was far from what I'd hoped. Bella habitually blasted music, especially during my peak focus hours. She was into pop songs with heavy beats and seemed clueless about keeping the volume down in a house with a sick person. I'd prepped everything the first morning and had a big team meeting. At 9 a.m., as I started my presentation, her music kicked in from the next room. I tried talking louder, but my colleagues asked if I could turn it off. I paused the meeting for a minute, went to her room, and knocked. Bella opened the door, looking annoyed, and asked what was up. When I explained the meeting, she huffed but turned the volume down. 10 minutes later, it was cranked up again. The days that followed got worse. Bella wasn't just playing music. She was constantly on the phone with friends. Those calls could drag on for hours, filled with laughter, shouting, and vivid retellings of teen drama. I tried noise-canceling headphones, but they didn't block everything. I had to mute my mic in some meetings to keep her noise from bleeding through. Other times, I'd excuse myself mid-call to find a quieter spot outside. What frustrated me more was Bella's attitude when I asked her to keep it down. She acted like I was bothering her, like needing quiet to work was unreasonable. After getting interrupted during a critical meeting for the third time that week, I decided to talk to Emily. I explained that working from home required a quiet environment, and Bella needed to get that. Emily listened and said she'd talk to her daughter, but that conversation only bought a few hours of silence. By the afternoon, it was back to normal. As for Dad, when I asked him to step in, he just said Bella needed her space to relax. He suggested I work at a coffee shop if I needed quiet. In the end, I started leaving the house to work. I'd head to nearby coffee shops, the public library, or even sit in my car in a parking lot for essential calls. Every morning, instead of starting my workday in the comfort of the home I was essentially paying for, I'd pack up like a nomad. Laptop, charger, documents, headphones, all stuffed into a backpack to find somewhere else to work. The irony wasn't lost. I was escaping the house I supported financially. The space I once saw as my refuge and workplace had become a source of stress and frustration. Back then, I still hoped this was just a temporary adjustment. But deep down, I was starting to feel like a guest in my home. After 2 months of living with Emily and Bella, I started picking up habits I'd never had before. Working remotely from home, once a big perk, had become a daily struggle. After finishing work in the afternoons, I'd close my laptop instead of chilling in my room and leave the house. At first, I told myself I needed a quick walk to clear my head, but those walks stretched into hours. I found coffee shops around the neighborhood where I could sit quietly with a coffee and read without interruptions. Dad sometimes asked why I was barely home. I tossed out ready excuses. Needed to run errands, wanted to exercise, or was meeting friends. Emily didn't notice my absence, too wrapped up with Bella. Even when I was home, I started isolating myself in my room. Evenings watching TV with the family, chatting in the kitchen, or sharing simple moments became rare. I'd pop in my earbuds, building an invisible wall between me and the rest of the house. I began to feel like a tenant in the home I was essentially paying for. Stepping through the door didn't bring comfort or relief anymore, just tension and bracing for the next disruption. Friends started wondering why they kept spotting me in public at odd hours. When they asked about home, I'd say it's a bit complicated and change the subject. I wondered if I was overreacting in those quiet moments at coffee shops. But whenever I came home and faced reality, I knew finding space outside was the only way to stay sane. I got great news from work 6 months after Emily and Bella moved in. I'd been promoted to senior software engineer with a new salary of $150,000 yearly after taxes, not counting quarterly bonuses. It was a big step in my career. With that kind of money, I wasn't just financially comfortable. I could start thinking about bigger plans for the future. Sitting in my usual coffee shop, I opened my laptop and started crunching numbers. With this income, I could save a solid chunk each month toward buying my place. Nothing huge or fancy, just a home that was mine. I spent the whole afternoon researching the real estate market. Small townhouses in the suburbs were reasonably priced, and with my current savings plus the new paycheck, I could put down a deposit within a year. Over 3 hours passed in that coffee shop, and I overlooked the time. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful about a different future, one I could fully control. Around 7 p.m., I realized I'd skipped dinner and headed home. On the way, I stopped at a sandwich shop to grab some takeout. When I got home, I dropped the sandwich bag on the table and realized I needed to call David, my close friend in finance, to share the good news and get advice on buying a house. David's always been sharp about investments and real estate. The call lasted almost an hour. He congratulated me on the promotion and gave solid tips on mortgages, interest rates, and up-and-coming areas to invest in. While we talked, I pulled out my promotion letter to discuss the specifics with him. After hanging up, I felt more excited and optimistic than ever. I had a clear plan, a concrete goal, and, most importantly, the financial means to make it happen. Exhausted from a long day and the big call, I showered and hit the sack early. But there was a slip-up. I realized I'd forgotten to grab the promotion letter when I returned to my room. I'd left it in the living room. That forgotten paper on the table would be the starting point for the most significant upheaval since I moved back to my parents' house. And that $150,000 figure would soon become the center of a dispute that would change everything in our family. The next morning, I woke late and shuffled to the kitchen to brew coffee. Bella was rushing to get ready for school, grabbing her backpack and water bottle before bolting out the door. I finished my coffee and headed to my room to work, completely forgetting about the promotion letter I'd left on the table the night before. That afternoon, Bella got home from school. She noticed the paper on the table as she passed through the living room. Curiosity got the better of her, and she stopped to read it. Her eyes lit up when she saw the promotion notice, my name, and the $150,000 after-tax salary. Instead of leaving it where it was, Bella quietly took the paper to her room to read every detail. Around 5 p.m., Emily got home from shopping. Within minutes, Bella came downstairs, paper in hand, and spilled the beans to her mom. Emily read the letter, unable to hide her shock at the salary figure. She called Dad over and handed him the document. Dad, Emily, and Bella voiced their surprise at my income, which was way higher than they'd ever imagined. Dad remarked that I'd gotten a promotion without telling the family, while Emily was stunned by my financial situation. Bella stood by, looking pleased with herself for uncovering this big piece of news. Their short discussion ended with a decision to confront me about issues they felt needed rethinking. Dad, in particular, stressed that certain family matters had to be reconsidered in light of this new information. From that moment, the vibe in the house shifted, subtle but noticeable. The three kept their discovery under wraps, gearing up for a serious talk with me. Meanwhile, I was in my room, wrapping up the day's work, completely clueless that the number on that forgotten piece of paper had become the family's focal point and was about to spark significant changes in my life. 2 days after Bella found the promotion letter, the vibe in the house shifted in ways I couldn't quite pin down. Emily and Dad kept exchanging looks, having hushed conversations that stopped when I walked in. Bella was perkier than usual, throwing me these secretive little smiles. That Friday night, after dinner, as I started to head to my room like always, Dad motioned for me to stay. Something felt off, but I sat back down. After a pause, Dad said, "I want to congratulate you on your promotion. The family's proud of your success." His words caught me off guard, a knot of unease forming. I hadn't told anyone. Quickly asked, "How'd you find out?" Emily jumped in, her voice a bit awkward. "Bella saw the promotion letter you left on the living room table. The second she said it, A slow burn of anger flared inside me, my face heating up. My privacy had been invaded, but I held it together, sitting there to hear what they wanted. A few seconds later, Dad got to the point. Bella just graduated from high school and is heading to college. She needs a car for her part-time job and classes. His words triggered a sinking feeling in my gut. Before I could respond, Emily chimed in. Exactly. Bella needs more independence. With your new income, Marcus, getting her a car shouldn't be a big deal. A chill ran down my spine as I started to see where this was going. My voice shook slightly as I asked, "You think I should buy Bella a car?" Dad didn't hesitate. "You're the one with the means right now. Single, no family responsibilities. This is a good chance to show your love for your niece." His words hit me like a punch to the chest. They'd already planned this, turning me into their financial fallback without asking me. Emily kept going. "We looked into it. A decent car for Bella would be about $20,000. With your new salary, that's just a small expense." Hearing $20,000 tossed out like pocket change made my blood boil, my heart pounding. My throat went dry, my hands trembling. I looked around the table, everyone staring at me expectantly, like my agreement was a given. Bella was even smiling, as if the car was already hers. At that moment, I felt like I was in a courtroom. A sentence had already passed, and I was expected to comply. My breathing got shallow, my chest tight. Finally, after a tense silence, my voice came out firm but shaky, holding back a flood of emotions. "I'm sorry, but I can't buy Bella a car." The second those words left my mouth, the air in the room froze. Their eyes shifted from expectation to shock, then disappointment. After my refusal, the dining room went dead silent, the kind of quiet that feels heavy. Bella broke it first, her face red with anger, demanding to know why I wouldn't buy the car when I had so much money. The way she talked about my money, like it was theirs to claim, felt like a slap in the face. Emily jumped in, her voice sharp with irritation. "Marcus, what are you thinking? This is your niece, not some stranger." I tried to stay calm, explaining that $20,000 wasn't pocket change and I had my financial plans. Dad cut in, his tone stern. "What plans are more important than helping family? You're living here, everything's taken care of. What burdens do you have?" His words pierced like an arrow. They saw my financial contributions as some debt I owed, to be repaid by meeting their every demand. Emily kept pushing, saying Bella needed the car for a better future. When I suggested a cheaper used car, Bella snapped that used cars weren't safe and asked if I wanted her to get in an accident. The way she spoke to me dripped with disrespect. Dad spoke again, his voice colder now. "Marcus, I'm disappointed in your attitude. You're being selfish. What's this family done for you that you can't share when you're doing well?" The word selfish hit like another slap. Me selfish? After sacrificing so much to care for Mom, covering most of the bills, giving up my office, putting up with Bella's attitude? Emily poured fuel on the fire, painting me as some freeloader kid, not the guy footing most household costs. When I brought up my contributions, Dad said it was just my duty, nothing special. Bella was crying now, saying she just wanted a car to get to school. Watching her, I felt like the villain in a stage drama. Finally, I stood up, my voice firm but exhausted. "I'm sorry, but I can't spend $20,000 on a car." As I started to walk away from the table, Dad delivered his final blow, his voice ice cold. "If you don't buy Bella a car, get out of here." It was an ultimatum. After everything I'd done, I was told to leave the house just for refusing to buy a car. At that moment, I realized I wasn't a son or brother. I was just an ATM with legs. After Dad's threat, I stood frozen in the dining room, the world spinning around me. His words echoed. "If you don't buy Bella a car, get out of here." I looked around the table. Emily avoided my eyes, fidgeting with a napkin. Bella was still crying, but her tears now seemed more calculated than genuine. Dad sat rigid, his gaze hard, like I was some traitor. None saw me as someone with feelings, limits, or the right to control my money. They just saw a paycheck to tap into. I turned to Dad and said, "You want me to leave? Fine, I'm done." Then I turned my back on them and headed for the stairs. Emily called after me, "Go cool off in your room. We'll talk later." But I didn't look back. One thought burned in my mind. It was time to go. Not because I was being kicked out, but because I finally understood my real worth in this house. 2 days after the fight, I spent all my time hunting for a new apartment. With my new salary, I found a lovely studio in Mountain View, just a 20-minute drive from work. I signed the lease immediately and planned to move in by the weekend. While Emily was out shopping with Bella and Dad was caring for Mom, I called a moving truck on Saturday morning. It arrived at 10 a.m. with 2 strong guys to help. I prepped everything. My stuff was neatly packed. As we moved the big bookshelf, Dad appeared, looking stunned. He asked what I was doing, and I calmly said I was leaving, like he'd suggested. Thomas tried to talk me into staying, saying he'd only spoken in the heat of the moment, but my mind was made up. Emily came home mid-move, rushing in, panicked. She begged me to stay, saying we could revisit the car issue. Bella stood in the corner of the living room, silent, looking uneasy with a hint of regret in her eyes. The hardest part came when the last boxes were loaded onto the truck. I went to the porch to say goodbye to Mom. She was in her wheelchair, her eyes heavy with sadness. Even though she couldn't speak, she knew what was happening. As I leaned down to hug her, tears streamed down her cheeks. Those tears cut into me like a knife. Mom, the reason I'd moved back, was powerless to stop me from leaving. I whispered to her that I'd still cover her care costs and not live here anymore. As I got into the truck, I didn't look back. In the rearview mirror, I saw Mom still there, tears falling, with Emily and Dad standing beside her, looking shell-shocked. For the first time in months, I felt free, but also felt my heart breaking into pieces for the first time. The new apartment in Mountain View was small but perfect for me. Bright and airy with big windows overlooking a garden, a tidy little kitchen, and, most importantly, absolute quiet. No pop music blaring, shouting, or feeling like my space was being invaded. I spent all of Sunday unpacking and setting up my workspace. For the first time in months, I could place my computer exactly where I wanted, without worrying about someone moving it or messing with it. That first week in the new place felt like a rebirth. Every morning, I woke up to silence. No Bella yelling or Emily making excuses. I could focus entirely on work. No interruptions from phone calls or music from the next room. 2 days after moving out, my phone buzzed with calls from Emily and texts from Bella. I decided to block their numbers, keeping only Dad's open in case of an emergency with Mom. 3 weeks later, my life had fully settled into the new apartment. I was working efficiently, sleeping well, and, most importantly, feeling at peace. One Thursday afternoon, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Emily had found a way to reach me after I blocked her old one. The call started with her apologizing for the fight. She admitted that asking me to buy Bella a $20,000 car was unreasonable and said the family had reflected on their past demands. Then she shifted to the struggles at home. Dad was caring for Mom alone and struggling. She was busy with a new job and couldn't help regularly. The family needed me to come back. Emily promised that no one would ask for anything more if I returned. Bella had learned her lesson and would be more respectful. They'd value my personal space. She insisted things would be different because family sticks together in tough times. I listened and asked if Bella had apologized for her attitude. Emily fumbled, saying Bella was still young but had been talked to. When I asked about the car, she told Bella she still needed one, but they'd find another way. That's when I knew. Emily was still hoping I'd voluntarily buy the car once I was back. She just changed her approach, not her goal. I declined, politely but firmly. After hanging up, I sat in silence. I felt sad for Mom, but knew returning would mean falling into the same old cycle. Emily's promises were temporary, and I'd end up as the family's ATM again. 8 months have passed since I left the house in San Francisco. Life in Mountain View has settled into a familiar, comfortable rhythm. Every morning, I wake up to quiet, brew my coffee, and start work without worrying about noise or interruptions. My job's going strong. With a peaceful space and a clear head, my productivity is through the roof. I even landed a big project with a hefty bonus. As promised, I still send money for Mom's care every month. Instead of using the family's shared account, I set up a separate one just for her medical bills and meds, ensuring the funds go exactly where needed. Weekends, I drive back to visit Mom. Those visits last about 2 hours. I sit by her side, talking even though I know she can't respond clearly. I tell her about work, my new life, or sometimes silently hold her hand. Emily and Bella are usually there during these visits, but we only exchange polite hellos. No long talks, demands, or expectations. Dad's a bit awkward, occasionally asking about work but never bringing up my moving back. After each visit, I drive back to my apartment feeling lighter. I've fulfilled my duty to Mom without sacrificing my freedom. I've started saving seriously for a house. With a steady income and no longer footing the bill for the whole family, buying my place within 2 years is doable. Most importantly, I've reclaimed my self-respect. No more living like an ATM and being taken for granted or used. Every decision I make now comes from my judgment, not pressure from others. I'm not sharing this story to complain or fish for sympathy. I'm sharing it because I know others are stuck in similar situations, where kindness gets twisted into obligation, where silence is taken as agreement. If you're in that spot, I want you to know that you can set boundaries. You have the right to say no to unreasonable demands. And you're not selfish for choosing your freedom and self-respect. Real family isn't built on financial exploitation. Real love doesn't come with absurd conditions. I chose myself, and this time I'm not looking back. What about you? Are you ready to choose yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story hits home, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it. Thanks for following along.